Illinois became the 11th state in the U.S. to legalize recreational marijuana when Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act into law on June 5, 2019. As of January 1, 2020, adults 21 and older will be able to legally purchase small quantities of cannabis products in Illinois for recreational use from licensed state dispensaries. The new law allows purchase for up to 30 grams of cannabis flower, 5 grams of concentrate, and 500 milligrams of THC in edible product. But even when looking for relatively small quantities, don't expect recreational cannabis to be easy to buy from legal vendors on New Year's Day. The process of building the state's cannabis marketplace will start from ground zero and is expected to be a small and tightly regulated economy in its infancy, with only a small number of dispensaries expected to be up and running on day one. Nonetheless, entrepreneurs and capital market investors are looking at how and where to jump in. John Lothian News talked with principals of the Chicago cannabis consultancy Supercritical LLC, Jay Cowie, Kerry Jordan, and Sparky Rose, for their take on the emerging marketplace.
January 1st represents just the start of the Illinois adult recreational rollout. So it's when the existing medical facilities, and a lot of this has taken place already in terms of awarding the new licenses to those existing medical facilities. More of that will take place, and the adult recreational market will open up on January 1st, but a lot remains to go on in the state, namely around the social equity applicants. Now, those applications will need to be in by January 1st. They will go through a review process, a vetting process, and those applicants who have submitted under the social equity plan should expect to hear back from the state, whether or not they've been approved or not, by mid-year. So much continues to go on in the state, which makes Supercritical, our mission, our relevancy that much more critical, one could say, because as the tide changes in Illinois, so will the investor landscape. As the players in Illinois change, as the tax revenue comes into the state, so will opportunities in the state. So again, we feel that Supercritical will remain supercritical and relevant to the state of Illinois throughout this, not only first phase, but throughout the entire rollout of adult recreational cannabis.
The Illinois market is currently dominated by a few players. The ones that come to mind are Cresco, PharmaCann, GTI, Verano, Grassroots, and there's some others. Many of them are multi-state operators, so they have operations everywhere, but they're based here, and it's really rather surprising because they are national players. They're some of the largest players out there, and we have a very restrictive medical program, so it's a bit astonishing that they've grown to such prominence. One of these operators has 5 dispensary licenses, medical dispensary licenses, and under the current legislature, they get 5 more adult use licenses. And they all get to open up on January 1st when adult use becomes legal here in Illinois. And so they're going to be able to operate until more dispensaries come in. So on January 1st, we also have applications for new dispensaries, adult use dispensaries, being accepted by the state. Those won't be awarded until May 1st, and there's going to be 75 of them. So you're going to have 110 dispensaries controlled by a handful of players, and then another 75 coming in. And given the way the capital markets are currently pretty constrained for cannabis right now, I really don't foresee any large players bankrolling, coming in and trying to buy up a bunch of licenses or become a larger player in the market. So I think it's safe to say that they're going to have a pretty good hold on the market for the foreseeable future.
Social equity refers to the state's program to allow minority groups, disadvantaged folks who had been impacted by a drug policy that was oftentimes ill-written and targeted. It allows those individuals to participate in the growing cannabis industry by giving them ownership. So that's essentially what the social equity plan offers to these folks who, again, have been negatively impacted by an adverse federal drug policy. So they will be able to participate in the growth of the industry by having their names on dispensary applications, by taking ownership in dispensary operations, by participating in the craft, grow, infusion, license, and transportation segments of the Illinois adult recreational cannabis market. Right after the first of the year, but probably 6 months in, those same regulatory agencies and bodies are going to be very aware of, again, not only the social equity input, not only input, but the success rate, but also the taxing. The dispensaries will now be able to conduct business as any other retail operation should be. And by that, I mean that the cannabis businesses, the dispensaries, will be able to do two-way electronic banking. They'll be able to set up payroll deposits and allow their employees to take their checks home electronically. Now, until the federal legality around cannabis changes, all of it is going to be limited in the state, but it's an important first step towards not only legitimizing cannabis industry, period, but making sure that the entrepreneurs in our state here in Illinois are treated properly and are being considered such as any other retail operation or consumer packaged good operation should.
I think it's important for the capital market space to advance in a new area. I liken it back to the early 90s when technology was coming about and firms like Oracle and Microsoft, Apple were really nascent companies just on the verge of growing into something big. And I think it's a real opportunity for both investors and entrepreneurs to take part of that explosion in the market. On the local level, on the state level, it's becoming more and more prevalent that there is medical use and adult use. And I think it's a real opportunity for people to come in and earn healthy returns in the marketplace, both in the public markets and in the private markets. And I think it also presents a great opportunity for entrepreneurs. I think it's a landscape that embraces diversity and inclusion, and I'm really excited to see that blossom.
We at Supercritical do find great value in the hemp market. We feel hemp is a true commodity with identifiable hedging purposes. Something that is more in the marijuana or THC-based side of the industry currently suffers from lack of standardization. And what makes the futures industry so valid and so important is the fact that players in commodities know that when they're trading at the Board of Trade corn, they are trading yellow corn number 6 or hard red wheat number 5. There exists nothing like that in the cannabis industry. What we have are brands. Where I see the biggest obstacle is standardization across particular strains, but more importantly, if we are to consider and remember cannabis has medical efficacy, then there sure has to be standardization, because if you as a medical cannabis patient are taking a particular concentration or a particular brand, let's say to treat a particular condition or ailment, I have to know that that is going to be standardized, whether I get it in Chicago, San Francisco, or Denver. So in other words, Tylenol is Tylenol is Tylenol, no matter if I buy it in CVS, Walgreens, or Target. That is not the case with the THC-based products right now.
I see futures contracts and options available in the hemp marketplace initially, because hemp right now generally is legal nationally. I do not see THC type contracts anytime in the near future, not even within the first 5 years should it go federally legal. And that has to do more with the many different varieties and is it a commodity? Is it a consumer product? A lot of information that still has yet to be seen will help determine and answer some of those questions.
So I view my role at Supercritical as one of opening us up to the financial markets, drawing from my natural background coming from business development in the exchange side. Again, my focus is what can I introduce bringing from the world of finance and capital markets, knowing that there are a lot of folks in that world who are looking for opportunities in the listed cannabis, industrial hemp, and ancillary marketplaces. So it seems like a natural extension to be offering product to people out there who are very keen on finding new segments or new asset classes to trade.
In the private markets, it's more difficult to obtain capital because cannabis companies don't have access to banks in the way that non-cannabis companies would. It's still federally illegal, and therefore you cannot move money from state to state. So those that are raising capital need to do it within the state where it is legal. That presents challenges both from an investor perspective as well as from an entrepreneur perspective. One of the primary ways we service our clients who are interested in investing in the cannabis landscape is to provide what we call our due diligence workshop. It can be very challenging to assess the markets because they're new. There aren't a lot of comparables for which they can establish a valuation. And what we do a deep dive into a company's balance sheet, into their financial statements, as well as their operational procedures, as well as their administrative, their banking. And that helps the investor determine whether or not the investment is feasible and if it is something that's going to create sustainable and repeatable returns for them.
There will be 185 operating dispensaries across the state of Illinois. There will be 40 craft cultivation licenses issued, but none of those companies will even be to their first harvest by this point in time. And that's for a population base of, 12.75 million people here in Illinois. If you were to contrast that with, say, Colorado, Colorado has roughly 6 million people. They have 680 cultivators, and they have 520 dispensaries. So we're not going to have a lot of access. We're not going to have a lot of product. And I think there's going to be a shortage of product and access for the foreseeable future. I think Illinois has to be very, very careful not to fall in the same trap that California is currently working themselves through, and that is with the high taxes that are on adult use cannabis, with the low supply, high demand, that is going to create an incentive for individuals to go to the illicit market because it's less expensive. In many cases, it may be easier to access due to the fact that there aren't going to be that many dispensaries in the state. So in most states, once they go to adult use, what happens is it becomes more like, let's say, a liquor store. If you tick off all the boxes, you get a license and you can open up. Illinois is the only state that's doing limited licensure, which is really interesting. It's going to make for a very interesting market because typically in the first 3 years of adult use in a state that doesn't have limited licensure, the wholesale price of cannabis is going to drop roughly 50%. You're not going to see that in Illinois. It's going to take quite a bit longer because the supply just simply isn't going to be there.
Supercritical's mission is straightforward. We are committed to our clients' growth in terms of asset management, investment management, and operational efficiencies within the cannabis space. We came together because there was a hole in the market with the growing industry, and we wanted to provide the best-in-class educational and advisory services for them.